And I have my contact information here, just in case you have follow-up questions or if you start to test this out and you have any questions. So this whole presentation is really on what I did this year in my high school class. And it's just that reflection feedback cycle. So letting the students reflect, letting them get feedback. But this year with AI, instead of me reading all the reflections and having to give feedback. So our agenda tonight is just, I'm going to introduce you to my class because I think by me telling you about my class, you'll be able to make connections to your classroom, maybe things that are similar, maybe things that are different. Or you'll also be able to see how you could take what I did and put it into your classroom. So that's actually a picture of my high school. We are about 8 miles, probably actually 5 miles from Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. This second part of our time together will be like testing out a reflection. And Joe, I know you've done this. I think Susan's done this. I'm not sure about Brianna. So we can see how we try that out. And then I'm going to provide you with some of the data that I got from students and from the class and allow you just some time to look at them and think about what you would do as a teacher with those or with that set of data. And then lastly, we'll do answer questions and final thoughts, and then we'll head off to watch Survivor. Because I'm sure that is on everyone's schedule tonight. So my classroom. This is the quick snapshot. So I teach at a middle school and at a high school. There are two buildings. They act pretty much as separate buildings, but they are now connected. They originally were not connected. And so I teach in my high school classes, I teach a total of 55 kids. It's three sections that range from 14 to 21 students. And it's mostly ninth graders, but I do have ninth through 12th graders enrolled. It is an AP Computer Science Principles class, and it's almost an equal gender split. And I teach on a 4x4-ish schedule. So we're like 84 minutes of class instruction. And so I tell you this not because I think your classroom has to look exactly like mine, but I think you can see how it might replicate in your classroom based on my class. And so the first thing I did through this year is I really wanted to build capacity in this concept of reflection. Going into the year was, well, I'm a reflective person, but I don't necessarily pause and do a formal reflection. I kind of reflect on the go, reflect in the car, kind of reflect wherever I'm at. And I never really formalized my process. And so this year I decided to teach my students how to reflect, to practice that reflection, and then really show them the value of reflection. So I modeled it. We had lots and lots of repetition. And then I connected with students after the reflection so they could see the value in that reflection. And I will say, reflection for students in high school, especially ninth graders, is completely new. They do not know why they would do it. They do not know how to do it. They may have been told to do it in the past, but they always maybe reflected on long-term goals versus maybe smaller goals or smaller things to reflect on. And I really feel like practice helps this process. And so I started this in the beginning of the year. So I've had lots of time to do reflections. And I started a little bit slow here, and I did it after every formative assessment where I really asked them to kind of think through, like, how did you prepare? How did you do? How do you feel this formative is going to help you with your final summative? And our school is very much driven by formatives and summatives, whether they're projects or tests. Everything is kind of categorized in those two things. And as a project-based classroom, the formatives definitely lead to the summatives. There are so many connections. And as a teacher, I see that. But it's more important for my students to see that. And then recently, we've been doing this independent project, and AP has some guidelines that I'm actually not allowed to help them on their project at all. They can help each other. And so each day during the independent project, I ask them to reflect. And part of that reflection is the skill of reflecting, but it's also getting feedback. Each day you get encouragement through the AI feedback, as well as oftentimes next steps or next things to think about. Okay, I'm going to pause here. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask up until this point? Okay.
Hmm.
So, or Sarah, did you want to jump in?
Nope, I just was gonna, I wanted to make one more note to say, if Brianna, if you're there, hi. But that's it, because I'm trying to connect with her, but keep going.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Um,
I have a
so
quick question.
yes,
Okay, it took me a minute to find my mute button.
of
Um,
course. Every time on Zoom, I do the same thing.
yeah, so you said you modeled with your students how to reflect. What did that look like?
So, I have two options for reflecting. So I a lot of times we just do web-based because we are a every kid has a MacBook. And then I also have M2 hiding over here in the corner. And so at first I was using M2 as my reflection tool, and the students were going up to M2 to reflect. And how I was doing that was at first I practiced it in front of the class. So I showed them the question before M2 told me the question. So we could kind of like talk it through, like what are some things you would talk about? And they actually did like a think, pair, share. And so that they could like think through what they would say. And then I did the exact reflection in front of M2, because the quality of your speaking or the quality of your words makes a huge difference in the feedback you get. And you have to talk for at least 15 seconds to be able to move on to the second question. And so I really wanted them to see both a good response and a not so good response so they could see what like the next question could be. So a lot of times I create the first question and then the AI generates the second or the third question. Sometimes I'll manually pick all three questions if I just feel like I need to know something specific. And so I'll do model it with doing like a really poor reflection where I'm like just like thinking and pausing and staring, and not saying much. And they can see that feedback that I get at the end. And then another time I'll talk longer than the 15 seconds. I won't just stop when the 15 seconds are up, and see the feedback that you get from there. So I do like the good and the bad and kind of see the mix. Oh, Brianna's here. Brianna, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so
Hi, and
much.
Susan's at
Sorry
a
about
desk.
that.
We're all here. What a happy
Oh, good.
family.
Thank
Oh, and
you.
a cat. Oh, I love
Oh
it.
my goodness, great.
Brianna, where are you joining us from?
So I'm in British Columbia, Canada.
Love
Welcome.
it.
Yeah, just interested, saw it on my feed. I was like, that's something I'd like to know more about.
Cool. Did you come in
That's
through
awesome.
did you come in through Blue Sky or
Nope, I think it was,
Are
where
you in
was
the
it?
Google community?
I'm gonna say LinkedIn, question mark?
Oh,
it could have been LinkedIn. Yep.
Yes, yes, although I
Um,
am on Blue Sky as well.
oh, cool. Well, we can share our handles at the end here so we
Yeah,
can
let's
follow
do
one
it.
another. I'm just curious, since you're the only one we don't know here, you're a Mirror
Oh,
Talk user or you're new to this?
okay, so I'm brand new.
Cool.
I'm an ed tech coordinator, and I'm just like really interested in newer tools. And so I saw this pop up, and I'm like, oh, that looks pretty interesting. And so I thought
Awesome.
I'd just, yeah, pop in.
So I was just sending you a DM, but I'll just say it out loud here. If you didn't figure it out already, if you click on the resources tab on the bottom of the screen, you will see a link that's called Susan's presentation, and that will open this whole slide deck that you can also follow along, or you can save it for your own reference. So whatever she's showing you on the screen, you can open and save for yourself as well. And we'll be trying out MirrorTalk in a little bit. So you'll have a chance to make a free account and do what everyone else is doing. So welcome.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yes, perfect. All right, so I'm going to show you videos, and I apologize if you've seen these, but I was trying to make videos to explain to different people how it works. And I always struggle taking videos because I'm very much conscious of student privacy. And so I just wore a black hoodie to school one day, and I'm like, if I put my hoodie up, I can just pretend I'm a kid. Um, and so we can reflect in two different ways and it gets you to the same place. So one is MirrorTalk, and you don't need the sound on this, but you can always watch it later. But you can see I've got my black hoodie on. It greets you. I have a special greeting. I do like the peace sign to greet. Oh, I do have the volume up. I'm going to turn the volume off because it's not necessary. And then it will show you the reflection question. And then it will give you time to reflect and you'll just talk. You just talk. Talk to it like it's your best friend. And then after about 15 seconds, the next button will show and you can hit next. And the reflection that I'm going to have you do today, there'll be follow-up questions based on what you say on the first question. Okay. Now, the other way you can do it is with my little friend back here. This is M2. He's watching and listening to us tonight. And M2 has two phenomenal things that it can do. And they're like similar and different all at the same time. So M2 um, is he can be the reflection tool. So when I first started using this, I had this tool, he's called M2, in a corner, and it was like a confessional booth. I had to laugh because I was like, I felt like it was like on one of those like reality shows where they go to the confession booth. And so the kids would go over to it, talk to it, but it was like in a private corner, so no one else could hear them. And do the same exact thing. So I'll show that video here of me walking up to M2 with my black hoodie on, hoodie up, because you can't go hoodie down on that. And it's really the same exact process, but it's a touchscreen versus my MacBook is not. So the other thing that M2 does, which I'm not covering right now, but Sarah and I can stay on later if you do have questions, is M2 is giving me feedback tonight. And so I might look over every once in a while and he will help me think through what I'm doing to see if I need to be on a better track. So like one of the things it said is focus your questions to highlight the key points of reflection, asking teachers how they might adapt this approach for different age groups. So it's giving me feedback because I just said, oh, does anybody have any questions? M2 thinks I should be more specific, which is a great teaching tool. Okay, so let me show you just the steps to reflect. And I know some of you have experience of this. When you click the link, and Sarah will drop it in the chat for you in just a moment, or you can click on the presentation, you do need to enable your microphone and your camera for this to work. And then you're going to add your name. I'm not having you log in or create an account. You can just add your name. And honestly, if you want to use a fake name, because you don't want someone to know whose data is which, I completely appreciate your privacy. Feel free to do that. So
the link is in the resources, you'll see.
Okay.
I think it just popped up, MirrorTalk reflection. So you should be able to open that when you're ready. Okay.
All right. So the first question I created because I wanted to guide you. And then the next two questions are going to be specific to you. They're not, they're going to be AI generate based on what you say. So the more you talk, the quality of your reflection will get you maybe a clearer second question. For some of my kids, when they don't say much, or they're completely off topic, the second question makes no sense. which when we talk about it in debrief, we're like, well, it's AI, like it knows what you told it. Um, and so you're not going to get as good of feedback. So today, I'm just going to ask you to reflect on what is something at work that brings you a lot of pride? And then is it something that you've um, directly or indirectly impacted on that something? And so oftentimes I like to preview the questions with the students because then I feel like they feel more comfortable in the reflection. And so while we reflect, I'll have you feel free to go off camera, do what you got to do to reflect. And then when you're done reflecting, just turn your camera back on. Or, Brianna, if you don't want to be on camera, just maybe drop it in the chat when you're done, because I don't want to move on until we've all had an experience with the reflection. When you're done with your reflection, you will get feedback. It is AI generated. And then you have a couple of options. You can choose your greeting, and you can do a calming exercise if you choose. Okay. I'm going to stop talking and let you get on to trying out the reflection.
Yeah, so we'll do a little timer mentally. And we can turn our videos off, I guess, and sound. Everyone has their sound off. Okay, so Brianna's done. She's excited about her feedback.
Oh, perfect.
It said, see you next reflection. Susan, how are you
Oh, that's so
over there?
sweet.
Susan
Yeah, I
might be
thought it
still
was really
talking.
cool.
Awesome.
And like because there was like background noise going on as well, like I was like, oh, okay, like let me just minimize the noise, and then I was
Mhm.
able to still keep talking to it. And so I was like interested, like, oh, is it still picking up the noise even though it's not audible? Like when I put the volume, but there was like no trouble. So like that was good.
No, good.
Yeah. And really interesting how like immediate it picked up the prompts in response to what I was saying. And then it was really nice to get the positive feedback in the end. But I would be really curious as to what an example of the negative feedback would be, or like the more critical feedback, like if I was like to intentionally do it, poorly, what would it say? Like, it'd be like,
Yeah, so
what would the prompts do? That would be interesting.
you should definitely try it and feel free
Yeah.
to use this link later and type in a different name and do the same one and just and play around with it. I've never seen Mirror Talk not be positive. Now,
Okay.
as a teacher, every once in a while, I will get alerts based on what someone has said in their reflection.
Oh.
Students on their independent projects for my class, a lot of kids choose mental health topics to talk about. And so one kid his project is on kind of a PTSD, suicide connected topic, a really intense topic. And whenever he would say suicide, talking about his project, it would immediately alert me. Like I would get an email before, like as soon as he was done or as soon as he said it. I also had a kid where it thought the kid dropped an F-bomb in the reflection. But as a teacher, I went back and I'm like, this was a sixth grader. I'm like, I don't think so. And I could listen and read the reflection. And so I read it and I didn't see it. And so then I listened to it and I heard something that probably sounded like that. But
Do
I
you get
think
the
more of
scripts
like,
every time? Sorry to interrupt. I just want to know, like, do you get the scripts every time or are they
oh, you can see the script every time.
oh, very good.
Yeah. But I'll show you something even better. So as a teacher, you can always read the transcript or listen to them. But I'll show you. And the next thing we're going to do, I think it's even stronger than that. How many of you guys used Flip before it's no longer Flip or Flip Grid, and then it was Flip, and then I think it's gone.
Love Flipgrid. I'm so sad.
I know, right? But when I was at COVID and I used Flipgrid, the first video I watched, the kid had no shirt on. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am not watching another video. So I love this because I can read the transcript, I can listen, but really it's this class analytics and student analytics that is like the game changer. All right. So I'm going to have you, and I think we'll just do this together because I don't think it makes sense to go in a breakout room with three people. Um, but I really want you to be able to see these analytics. And I just gave you a couple because I don't want to overwhelm you, especially because they're my kids and you don't know them. And so I'm really just curious as we look through the next couple of slides, is what are things that jump out at you? What do you notice? What do you wonder? And like, what would you do with this information? Because I really feel like the reflection and the feedback are super powerful by themselves, but I feel like the teacher involved in this really amplifies it. And so I'll just click through. At the end of a reflection, so all the kids have reflected. We're about to move on to the next day's reflection. And you can see this was day one of our project. And the kids had to, the project is called Create, and the kids have to talk about what is their purpose of their project. And so I'm just going to pause and let you review. All right, so you may not have gotten to the end of it or not. Um, But you can see how this class data has a lot of value. Instead of listening to all 21 students before the students leave for the class, you can read this and have an idea before they even leave your classroom, if they're on target with what you were hoping that they would learn or kind of like pick up. Or if there were some like moments where you're like, ooh, I need to fix something before they leave. And so I think that first paragraph really does a great job of capturing what I was like so happy to see this first paragraph because it showed like students had lots of ideas. They're really thinking through their project. They wanted to be fun, of course. They're mostly ninth graders. And then the second paragraph is really like ideas for me as a teacher. And again, you use your teacher, desire to listen to another voice or not. You can look at this and be like, oh, I already do that. Or look at it and be like, ooh, that's something new. Is there anything that you saw in this that jumped out at you? And I know it's a little out of context because it's my class.
One thing that I really love with the Mirror Talk feedback is just how positive it is. I noticed when I've practiced with the app that sometimes I felt like I was just pouring my heart out to it. I'm talking to it about my struggles, and it just seems so nice to just have somebody who seemed to understand what's going on and just be so positive and give me some suggestions that I can really go into the classroom the next day and apply. So that's something I really like.
Absolutely.
And when I read your second paragraph where it's suggesting the gamification, my thoughts were, I'm an English teacher. Well, what are some examples of that? And then I just kept reading and it was just walking me through some, again, concrete examples. I don't teach your content, but it made me feel like, I could be in your shoes and go in and try this the next day. And that is so empowering. And that is, what really attracts me to the whole M2 and Mirror Talk platform.
Yeah. And like I think you probably also use the reflection as a teacher, which is again another component that Mirror Talk does. And that if you need like a shoulder to lean on, M2 is always encouraging. And doesn't share what you say with other people in your school. Love it. Yeah, so super powerful. And I love even taking these things and be like, ooh, Mirror Talk says this. Do we agree? Do we disagree? Like, where are we at here? Like, which I think is super cool. All right, I'm going to move on because I'm running out of time. But I wanted to show you two different students, like the follow-up. Like, what do I get? And actually, what do they get in that feedback? So, as a teacher, I can quickly look, and each kid gets a card like this. And I zoomed out on their name or I covered up their name and their picture. and they gave me permission to use their words. So it gives them a score, which is like a DOK level. 4 is phenomenal. But honestly, just looking at the card in the yellow, the sunshiny means we're on track. And so a quick visual of all of my students, if they're all yellow, I'm probably not digging in and listening to every reflection. If I see it more orange or more blue, then I'm clicking and being like, ooh, what's happening here? So it allows you to kind of decide which kids you need to go deeper on and which kids you know they're on track. And then it tells you what Mirror Talk told them, because I think it is important to be able to look at this and be like, oh, I don't agree with that, or I absolutely agree with that, or having that conversation with the student about like, hey, Mirror Talk said this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And in a computer science class, we do want them to agree or disagree with AI. We want them to have a say. And then the other part you get from the student view, which is so powerful, is these three things. Where are they at in their zone, their mindset, and their tone? Because teaching is more than content. Teaching is like a whole child. We have to know where they're at and their emotional levels in that day. And in a high school and middle school, these can be all over the place. So ideal zone, perfect. They're in a growth mindset. That's super powerful. And then it said the tone is mostly constructive and neutral, which shows some awareness, but may lack motivation. And that sentence right there describes the student to a T. So as a teacher, when I look at this and I see that they're kind of all in these like positive greens, I know we're on the right track. Is there anything else that you see here that would make you pull the student aside or have a conversation or ask a question?
I think definitely with the mindset category, if I'm seeing a negative mindset, that is certainly a red flag where I would want to follow up with that student. Maybe that student's just having a bad day. Maybe the student's struggling really hard with that one particular concept. So I think that would be a place where I would really want to focus and see where the low mindset scores are.
Yeah, and you can see this in a quick snapshot. You can look at trends, you can look at the classroom levels, or you can dig in with students. Okay, so then student two, oh wait, is this still student one? Sorry. Student one continued on. Should this really say student two, or did I mix myself up here? Let's see. That was student one. So this must be student two. I just have it mislabeled. Sorry. Okay, so different student. Um, so this is the computer science game. It sounds funny when it's like I have a user pick up trash and then add it to a list. That is a great project. It just sounds funny. So again, here is their feedback. Creative idea with addressing water pollution through programming and user interactions. Um, oh, I do like this because this is something I would say. Try drafting a detailed outline of your project, including the program language. So it's like you should plan your project out. Yeah, I said the same thing, but it's specific to this kid. So maybe they will listen more here. And then this looks a little bit different. Okay, zone is high, mind sits in the middle, tone is lower. And so this kid I would dig into a little bit more. So neutral mindset, so we're not in a negative mindset, but neutral feels like it's heading that way. Um, and so this might be a time to have a conversation. And then when you look also at the tone that it's negative and unclear, um, this is one I might listen to because maybe they didn't say much or didn't respond to the question, or maybe they're just having a rough day. And so by looking more or reading the reflection, you can understand them more. But in a class or if classes where I have a total of 55 kids, it's really hard to read every kid's reflection every day. And so having these snapshots allows you to pick and choose which are the priority kids you need to reach. Anybody have any thoughts on any of the feedback from the students? Okay, so we just debriefed, so we can skip that one. So, really, my final thoughts, and I'll be glad to stay for questions, is I wanted this reflection to be a way that students can learn how to be high school students. The transition at our school from eighth grade to ninth grade, even though the buildings are connected, is crazy. We grade differently in both buildings. We have different expectations. We have no backpacks in the middle school. You have to carry your backpack in the high school. Your phone has to be locked up. Your phone goes in a caddy. It's just like a different atmosphere and what the expectations are. And students need help also with the executive functioning. Like, how do you study? And like, how can you make a connection between what you did to prepare for an assessment, whether it be a project or a test, and how did you score on that? And while we think that they see that correlation, ninth graders definitely do not. And that whole concept of like the metacognition, like thinking about your thinking, thinking about your learning, thinking about your progress is something that I feel if we can teach at the early ages, it stays with you. I definitely was not a reflective student. I probably became a reflective adult about 5 years ago. But I feel like I wish I had done it earlier because I would have learned so much more about everything I do and just pause to think versus just do and then go on to the next thing. And then it also gives every student a voice. The students know I'm looking at them. And so the quiet kid who is scared to death to talk out loud in class has a place to have a voice and perhaps share something that they would not willingly share with me in person. And so bringing up that student voice, I believe, has a lot of power. And based on some research I did, a majority of the kids say I should do this again next year, which for high school kids to like something um, is an absolute win. What kind of questions can I answer for you?
What kind of reflection questions did you start with to generate this?
So, a couple of things. So, like with formatives, they were doing projects. So, I asked them very specifically about, like, what was your project? What is something you're proud of? And I try to keep it really like positive and very much like their opinion. So, I'm never asking them, for really conceptual understandings through the reflection. I'm just asking for like, how did they think they did? What do they wish they would have done to prepare? So really those kind of like, how are you as a person right now? How do you feel about the class? And then I always link the formatives to like, how do you think this is going to help you make a game? If a game is our end product, how do you think this formative is going to lead to that? We don't grade behaviors per se, but we ask kids. We have these approaches to learning, and we kind of score them in middle school, and we. So I like to get their feedback because like one of them is like communication. Like how good are you at communication? So asking the kids, being like, this is communication. Where are you at in the beginning of the quarter? And then asking them the same exact question at the end of the quarter will allow you to see some growth in the students. So I would say start with the easy questions that every single person can answer because it has to do with them before you start asking any questions that are a little bit deeper.
I wanted to ask you a question. First off, you and I kind of have a lot in common in terms of I teach two high school classes and I teach two middle school classes.
Oh,
I
wow.
teach eighth grade language arts and I teach English 1 high school credit. But I'm in a middle school building
Okay.
and teaching both of them. And um, I just got my demo today. I've been playing around with the app with MirrorTalk, and the demo came today, and I set it up and I introduced M2 as my co-teacher. And we had a lot of fun. And I thought it was really interesting how we would stop and ask him two questions along the way. And at the end of class, with still about 10 minutes to go, I hit a button and M2 basically recapped our whole lesson and then had a great question for an exit ticket. So I was wondering, at the end of class, have you ever used it as an exit ticket? And I'm just wondering about the logistics about sounds like that might be a better situation where I tell them to log into their Chromebooks and answer the question there. But I just love how M2 was able to just generate a great question about how are you going to incorporate the little grammar lesson that I did, the punctuation lesson. How are you going to incorporate this in your writing? And ask for them to do that. So
I
I,
have not used the exit ticket, but I love the idea. I have used the summarize that.
mhm.
And then the one I've been using this week, I got all new students because it's the beginning of a quarter. Translate that. So I'll give directions and I will say, translate that in Spanish because I have three students who are very new to speaking English. And so I'll translate the directions for them. And I could type it, right, and use Google Translate, but I can't do that fast enough. So here I put the microphone on and I do that and say, translate that, and it totally does. And the kids were mesmerized, and I feel like they would feel more included because I'm acknowledging their language. Um, and we have so many kids who speak different languages here. We
Mhm.
tested it with like a ton of different languages, and it was pretty powerful.
It can do
That
pretty
is
much any language, is what we've discovered. And also, and like Susan's saying, the play, and like you're both Susans are saying, the playing around with it and just in the moment and what can it do and pushing it a little further. I think that's the way we're finding out how much it can do because you can even, if we wanted to say something like, instead of just summarizing what we've done in Spanish or asking it to summarize this, you can try things like, can you give me the top three points that we made today in this lecture, but summarize them but give me them in Spanish. So like playing around with exactly how much you can ask it to do. We have so many ideas that are coming in now just from teachers that are doing exactly what you guys are doing. Like what can I throw at it today and see how well it handles it? And we're seeing pretty incredible results just from that. So I just wanted to add that to really just be playful with the way you talk to it like a person, right? Like another teacher. And that's really, I think, where the beauty of it starts to fall into place.
I love that. I'm going to try that. We had him tell us, I say him, we had M2 tell us a joke related to what we were learning, and they thought that was so funny. And then a couple of students asked, their native language, could you tell me that same joke, but in Spanish?
Mhm.
And they really thought that was so cool how just in a couple of seconds it was able to do that. And I was on the sidelines just watching how excited my students were to learn and to be engaged on that level.
Mhm.
They're a good class. They really are. And I consider them engaged most of the time, but I've never really seen the eyes light up like they did with M2 in the room. And so another question I had for you, you kind of touched on it, Susan, was about I noticed you talked about pulling the hood up and we mentioned the flip grid. And when I used Flipgrid, every year I ever used it, I had parents refuse to let their students participate. They did not want their kids on camera. Just a few parents every once in a while, I would just pop up and say, I'm not comfortable with that technology in the classroom. And one of the previous sessions I did kind of touched upon people who are hesitant with that AI influence. So, and one of the kids even asked me today, are the Chinese looking in on us and spying on us right now? So, and I was like, no, that's not what's happening at all. So I guess my question is if you have some students who are reluctant, or maybe even some parents who are reluctant, what would be your suggestions? Right now, I have not heard anyone complain, but just anticipating, just in case, what would be your suggestions?
So right now, my school does not allow the kids to sign in. So just like how you guys signed in, they use their first name. And I only have them use their first name. Some kids that need a last initial so I can differentiate them. So it's not connected to their Google account and it's not honestly connected to their full name. Now we have different AI policies and how we're using it as a teacher. And honestly, it's for every website. And so as long as I go through that vetting process, then I'm covered. And so I'm in the middle of that vetting process where someone at our district office does all the look at the privacy statements and all that kind of stuff. So because I just have them use their first name, I feel like they have a little bit more trust in it.
Okay. That's a good idea. Right now, as I said, I'm a beginner. This was day one with M2. And I did ask a couple few days ago our IT department to whitelist the MirrorTalk AI. And as far as I know, they're going to do that. So like I said, my thought was just try to get them to log in through their devices. But again, I love your idea about having the reflection station to just have some days where they can go up and just interact one-on-one, or maybe set it up so it's interacting with a small group of 2 or 3 students.
Yeah. And the demo, I mean, the unit here has like the whiteboard feature, it has different activities. So Brianna, just so you know, there's like kind of two components here. And so we're talking about the M2, which you can certainly sign up to get a demo of, but you don't need this device to do all the things I was talking about tonight.
Yeah, I saw there's a couple of different things going on here. Both are equally as exciting.
Yes.
I do have like, so I'm very naive and new to this. This is just like me just checking it out and seeing what's
Yeah.
up. So forgive my ignorance if, if it comes across. But I have a question related to this M2. So if like I'm imagining me, I'm a teacher in a classroom and I'm trying to talk to it, but there's maybe 5 other students that are trying to talk to it too. Does it pick up everyone's voice, or is it just allocated to one voice at a time? Or how does that work?
So there is a microphone in the back. And so when you do, like when a student wants to talk to it and not right next to it, they can push a button on the microphone. And then they say
Oh,
like, hey, M2, summarize that. Or or they can ask it, oh, Sarah's showing you the microphone. And
got
you wear
it.
it as a necklace.
Mine's
Super cute.
broken, so I have to fix it. So I'm just holding it.
And
Wait,
so like,
okay,
I
so
wear it
the
as a
microphone
necklace
is
so
that
it can pick up my voice anywhere. But then when kids want to ask it questions, I hand them the microphone so they can push the button um and talk to it.
clever.
But we do have an expansion pack where you can buy a multi-mic sort of expansion hub of like a
Mm-hmm.
charging hub. So you can have several mics to hang around the room or pass around the room, aside from the
Mm.
mic it comes with. So that is something that's now available.
And that policy that you sent, the swivel, is that the policy for both of these programs?
So I put in the resources swivel privacy document, which is literally just, I just grabbed it straight from the bottom, the very bottom of swivel.com of our website. So
Yeah.
you can, that's our Swivel is the main, if you don't already know, Swivel is the main company. That's the brand. We're just actually today is our 15-year anniversary. So
Oh,
Oh,
it's our 15 years of Swivel today. So that is our company overall privacy
got
document.
it.
And then the other one I put was the MirrorTalk privacy, which is from straight from their website. So if you lose them, you can open them and keep them, but they are also available right there on the bottom of each site whenever you need them to show to anybody.
Mm. Yeah, because that's
And then I did put the demo consultation form there as well for anybody that is interested. I think everyone mostly, like Susan, you're talking about, Joe doesn't need a demo. But Brianna, if you were interested in like talking about getting a demo for a couple weeks and getting training and seeing what it's like, that's the form you'd fill
Mhm.
out.
Mm.
You'd likely be talking to me first, so it wouldn't be a
Right.
scary process.
No.
well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being so engaging. I know it's tough on a Wednesday night. I didn't even know which night it was.
Neither did I
Um,
for a second.
to like think about that for a second. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on Gmail. Feel free to reach out on me on Blue Sky. Um, and and ask away. Ask any questions you have. So if you're done, feel free to take off, but if you want to stay and ask any follow-up questions, let me know.